We give praise and esteem and honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yahushua HaMashiach this day. And now we shall proceed. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. And they are they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Abba's name, and you receive me not. And if another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that come from Elohim only? Do not think that I will accuse you to Abba. There is one that accuse you, even Moses, in whom you trust. For had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? Let's go to Numbers chapter 11. You know, we've been bouncing around a little bit, moving around different concepts out of the law, and the whole thing that we really trying to get to. And honestly, we're taking a real round, almost what some would say is even the route like we took walking around in the wilderness to get to the point to show how he redeemed us from the transgressions of the covenant. Something that we mentioned when we were looking at things. We just go in reverse, and maybe in front, and in forward, and this, that, and the third to get to that point. But it's a lot of information and ground that got to be covered on many different things before you could get there. But you were willing, we will get there. And we are presently in Numbers chapter 11. Numbers chapter 11. Yes, Numbers chapter 11. In verse 1. And when the people complained, it displeased Yahuwah, and Yahuwah heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of Yahuwah burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Yahuwah, the fire was quenched. Notice, key point, who did the people cry unto? Let's look at the word cry, because we just trying to do something. When we look at the word cry, it is sa'ak. It is to cry out. It is to call for help. To call for help. Now, why is this important? When we're looking at crying for help, let's see why this would be important. I want to ask you a question. Did they cry out to Yahuwah first? Or did they cry to? Why didn't they cry to Yahuwah instead of crying to Moses? Why did they cry to Moses? Because people always say that you don't have to go through nobody to get to Yahuwah. But they cried. Let's just read it again. And he said, well, let's read verse 1 again. And when the people complained, it displeased Yahuwah, and Yahuwah heard it. Hold on, man. Wait one second. So let's look at it again, right? And when the people complained, it displeased Yahuwah, and Yahuwah heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of Yahuwah burnt among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Yahuwah, the fire was quenched. So why is that important? John the 15th chapter. Dudes always say that, but the law say different. And you know, there's the example of Jeremiah doing this here. But let's just, like he said, if you would have believed Moses, you would have believed me because he wrote of me. It's right here in the law. What is he talking about? John 15:7. He said, if you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Abba esteemed, that you may bear fruit, so shall you be my disciples. As Abba have loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love, and if you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I kept my Abba's commandments and abide in his love. It dropped down, we need to roll a lot quicker. That's not what I wanted. Well, that was cool. That's not what I wanted. We'll swing to chapter 17. Chapter 17. John chapter 17. So that's what I want. Now John 16 is what we more than likely gonna go with. 16 and 23. 16 and 23. And in that day you shall ask me nothing. Truly, truly, I say unto you, whatsoever you shall ask Abba in my name, he will give it you. Hitherto have you asked nothing in my name. Ask and you shall receive, that your joy may be full. These things have I spoken unto you in Proverbs, but the time come when I shall no more speak unto you in Proverbs, but I show you plainly of Abba. And at that day you shall ask in my name, and I say not unto you that I will pray Abba for you. For Abba himself loved you, because you love me, and have believed that I came out from Elohim. I came forth from Abba and came into the world again. I leave the world and go to Abba. Now notice he said that you're asking his name. They went to Moses and asked in Moses' name to pray to Yahuwah on their behalf. They called on him to ask him for help from Yahuwah. They did not go straight. If people always claim about going straight, you could go straight. Why didn't they do it here? Why didn't they do it here? This is right here in the Torah. This ain't no prophets, no New Testament. This is right here in the law. Why didn't they do it here? Why nowhere in the law do you see the people going straight to Yahweh? Why do they always go to Moses and ask Moses to speak to him on their behalf? You have to understand the places in the law where these things come from, and then you wouldn't even care when people make these statements of the things that they make. Are trying to say that this stuff ain't the law and that's not book, because you would know that their speaking would show their ignorance of the text, and it would also more importantly show their lack of belief of the word. So as Paul stated in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, if a man be ignorant, let him be ignorant. If they don't know and that's how they want to be, then let them stay like that. Yahuwah has no problem. He said, my people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. He said, because you have rejected me, I will reject you. He doesn't have a problem with that. He doesn't have a problem. He said, they blind leaders are the blind, and if they both be blind, they fall in the ditch. He said, leave them alone. Leave them alone. See, and I had this conversation with somebody last week. Our biggest problem is we want to force people and feel like if you show them that something is factual, that they will believe it and they will follow it. And the word is not that type of thing. Even if you're dealing with things that are not the word, that are factual. If it is not in a person's heart, it doesn't matter what you show them. It doesn't matter what you tell them. And you telling them repeatedly and constantly and showing them is in vain. You can show a person one time, you can show a person two times, and then you just going to have to pray that Elohim called their person to stop opposing himself, and that he calls them to be released from the clutches of Hashatan and go about your day. Because at the end of the day, you're not pushing the gospel. You're not helping this person. All you're doing is making a person's heart harder, because you steady coming at them with something that they don't believe, don't want to hear, or refuse to accept. You know what I'm saying? You have to have enough wisdom to know what, you know what you, it ain't just with the word, that's with anything, period. It ain't just with the word, that's with anything, period. If you know they don't want to hear it, if you know they don't want to accept it, then start trying to tell it to him. Well, let that nigga stay like that then, because clearly he's comfortable. Clearly she's comfortable. And there's nothing that you can do to change that. And you have to go on about your day. Because at the end of the day, you're not frustrating them, you frustrate yourself. See, Yahuwah never got frustrated with, let me keep telling you. It was the fact I told you and you bucked me. And you already knew what type of person that I am. And what I'm about. And you trampling down our agreement. And when I show compassion to you, you give me your butt to kiss. See, that's what made him upset. But there were plenty of people in this text that refused to hear the word. He ain't chasing down. He said, well, screw that nigga then. He said, if you forsake him, he will forsake you. He said, screw you then, nigga. Shoot. You're lost. That's how you have to. As cold-hearted as and heartless as that sounds, that's what you have to do. 1 John chapter 3, though. Yeah, on 3 and 18, I would say. Yeah, all you can do is get to him, man, and shoot. Pray y'all turn them from opposing themselves. That's all you can do. You can't do much more than that. I ain't saying y'all may think that way, but I know the young man who I spoke to, that was his line of thinking. Is that if I show you that it's factual, speaking of the word specifically, you'll believe it. And therefore you'll walk in it. And that's not necessarily the case, honestly. My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Hereby we know that we are of the truth and shall assure our hearts before him. For if our heart condemn us, Elohim is greater than our heart and know all things. Beloved, if our heart condemn us not, then we have confidence toward Elohim. See, that's what you have to sit back and do. Can you stand up and look in the mirror and be confident that your heart don't condemn you? Because if your heart is not condemning you, then your faith towards Elohim, your confidence towards Elohim can be very, very strong. That's the level that you got to try to get yourself with. And that word in Greek is to accuse or to condemn or to find fault with or blame. There's no blame in your heart. Then you moving while you're supposed to be moving. I'm talking about not just you convinced, I'm talking about you know it. I'm blameless at this moment. You can approach the Elohim. Hold on one second. So yeah, excuse me. That's the level that you got to get to. No blame.
Is the plate over?
Yes, Leah. It's been over for quite a while now. Hello, Lizzie. Very well then. Verse 22. Whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. And this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and love one another as he gave us commandment. And he that keeps his commandment dwell in him, and he in him. And hereby we do know that he abide in us by the Ruach which he hath given us. Hello, Abigail. So our whole point of what we're looking at is that when you believe on his son, you go to him. He's the one who's going to. How do we know you go? Hebrew chapter 7. This is how we know he's your help. Come here, Abigail. Seven and 22. Come here, Abigail. Come on, Lizzie. Hey, little Afro baby. Hebrews 7 and 22. But so much was Yahushua made a surety of a better testament, and they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death. But this man, because he continue ever, have an unchangeable priesthood, wherefore he is able to save them. Notice the reason why we look at this point, because Moses cried out, the people were crying out for help to be saved from the wrath of Elohim. Yahusha is entered into the inner sanctum in the Kadesh and Shamahim to save us from the wrath of Elohim. To save them to the uttermost that come to Elohim by him, seeing he ever lived to make intercession for them. So let's come back to Numbers. So we'll read verse 2 again. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Yahuwah, the fire was quenched. They said when Moses prayed unto Yahuwah, the fire was quenched. The word pray here is palal. And that word is to intervene, or to intercede, or to mediate, or to judge. So Moses interceded, or is an intercessor, which is what we were just looking at in Hebrews, which is where we can sit back and we have law for you coming to Yahuwah in this man's name. I see that, Elizabeth. When we look at the fire was quenched, and we look at quenched, we look at shakah, and it means to sink or to collapse or to subside or to cause to settle, to drown. What can we think about when you sit back and you can say because he prayed that the fire was quenched, or the anger of Yahuwah was quenched, because his anger is waxing hot because of the complaining of the people. Well, let's sit back and let's look at an example of that. Luke 23, if we will. Let's say Luke 23. Luke 23. Luke 23 and about oh, that's a little too much. We'll drop it down. 16 we'll start at. Make it 15. Actually 14. And we'll work our way down a little bit. Or 13 for context. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, you have brought this man unto me as one that pervert the people. This is one of the things that got Yahuwah hot, because the people were complaining, so they were perverting the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof you accuse him. No, nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. And they cried out all at once, saying, away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedation came in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate therefore, willing to release Yahusha, spake again to them, but they cried, saying, crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, why, what evil have ye done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. And he released unto him that for sedation of murder was cast into prison, whom they desired. But he delivered Yahusha to their will. Now we will drop down. How far would we like to drop down? Drop down about verse 27, I suppose. It ain't really that far of a drop, but nevertheless. And there followed him a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Yahusha turned. See, that take you back something like this here, right? I'm trying to think. There's a verse in Isaiah for this. It's been a long time since I read it, and I'm trying to remember it. Give me a second as I scan this. That ain't it. That might be it. Come over here to Isaiah chapter 32. Yes. Isaiah chapter 32. 32 and 9. Come here, Leah. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Very good. Isaiah 32 and 9. She really did spell her name on her. Nigga want to smell like dog in here too.
Pissing him.
Smell like white people in here.
Daddy, clothes and pee in here.
You peed in here then.
I didn't.
You spelled your name by yourself? 32 and 9. Rise up, ye women that are at ease. Hear my voice. Ye careless daughters, give ear unto my speech. Many days and years shall you be troubled, you careless women. For the vintage shall fall, and the gathering shall not come. Tremble, ye women that are at ease. Be troubled, you careless ones. Strip you and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins. They shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. Upon the land of my people shall come up thorns and briars. Yea, upon all the houses of joy in the joyous city, because the palaces shall be forsaken, the multitude of the city shall be left. The forts and towers shall be for dens forever, a joy of wild asters and a passage of flocks. Until the ruach be poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness be a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be counted for a forest. Now, he said that these women are going to mourn and weep because of destruction, and that a palace would be forsaken. Before we go any further, let me grab that word for palace. Bear with me, and I got to crank it up a notch to get to why we read Numbers 11 in the first place. Because he said the palaces shall be forsaken. So we're going to look at that word for palace. That word for palace is Armon. It's a fortress, citadel. A citadel is known for height. If you know Proverbs, you know that the name of Yahuwah is a strong tower, and those that run into it, they are safe. So the palace has been forsaken. Keep that in mind. The palace, will come back to Luke 23. That palace has been forsaken. Multitude of the city have been destroyed. Multitude of the city have been destroyed. Shall be left, in the forts and tens will be dens forever, until the ruach is poured on us from on high, and the wilderness be a fruitful field. Because I'm just setting it up. Because we're just trying to set ourselves up to be decently set up for Shabbat night. Yeah, we're willing. Come on back to this 28 though. Because it said these women will be wailing and lamenting. There's another thing I think about it, where he told her to teach the daughters lamentation. Let me find that. Let me find that. These verses I ain't looked at in a very long time. Let's see if I can find that for you. Let me see if I can find it. It's in my brain. I can't recall where it's at. If you're willing, we can find it. If not, I have to work my way back to it. Alright. Well, you go to Jeremiah 6 and 23 though. There we go. Pray the Lamb. We go Jeremiah 6 and 23 first, and then Jeremiah 9 and 17. Ain't got that old. They shall lay hold on bow and spear. They are cruel and have no mercy, for their voice roar like the sea, and they ride upon horses set in array as men for war against thee, O daughter of Zion. We've heard the fame thereof. Our hands wax feeble, and anguish have taken hold of us, and pain as a woman in travail. Go not forth in the field, nor walk by the way, for the sword of the enemy and fear is on every side. O daughter of my people, gird thee with sackcloth, and wallow thyself in ashes, and make thee mourning, as for an only son. Most bitter lamentation, for the spoiler shall suddenly come upon us. He sat back and he told them to make lamentation. as for a woman who make lamentation for her only son. Now let's go swing to Jeremiah 9 and 17 and see what we find there. And we'll see the instance of why we see these women following this man mourning. Because Isaiah's giving you an inkling. Now Jeremiah's giving you an inkling. Jeremiah 9 and 17. Thus saith Yahuwah of hosts, consider ye and call for the mourning women, that they may come, and send for cunning women, skillful women, that they may come. Let them make haste and take up a wailing for us, that our eyes may run down with tears, and our eyelids gush out with waters. For the voice of wailing is heard out of Zion. How are we spoiled? We are greatly confounded, because we have forsaken the land, because our dwellings have cast us out. Yet hear the word of Yahuwah, O ye women, and let your ear receive the word of his mouth, and teach your daughters wailings, and every one her neighbor's lamentations. For death has come up into our windows, and have entered into our palaces, into that citadel, to cut off the children from without, and the young men from the streets. Come on back to Luke chapter 23. I guess we read verse 26. And believe it or not, this is leading us to the word of what we're focusing on this evening. Once we probably get that word, we probably stop. And as they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon of Cyrene coming out of the country, and on him they laid the stake, that he may bear it after Yahusha. There followed him a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Yahusha, turning unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. You see how that goes back to what we just read in Jeremiah? Chapter 9 specifically. Even Isaiah 32. He told her, don't cry for him, because Jeremiah 6 told you to cry for him. You say, you don't need to cry for me. You say, you need to cry for yourself and for your kids. Listen what he tells. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, Baruch are the barren, and the wombs that never bear, and the paps which never gave suck. If you remember what we just read in Isaiah 32, he talked about those teats. Let's reread that again. He talked about a little breast there. So you're gonna say it'll be a good thing for you if you ain't never had no kid to nurse on you. Because he said the women were careless. He said verse 12, they shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant field, for the fruitful vine. He said all this is going to happen until the Ruach be poured from on high, and that wilderness turn into a fruitful field. That was verse 12 where he told them to lament for the teats. So when he say Baruch are the barren, and the womb that never bear, and the path which never gave suck, that means they would be lamenting for those who had, just like they were lamenting for him. Yeah. Praise the Lamb for the word. So what was all that while we were looking at that? We looked at that for one reason. Because we can see why. Number one, you know why these women were following behind him, mourning and weeping. Because it had already been prophesied that they would be following behind him, mourning and weeping. Them mourning and weeping was also symbolically for them to understand that they would be mourning and weeping at the destruction of Jerusalem. And also for us to consider that if we find ourselves on the wrong side, because remember he prayed so that the fire could be quenched or be subsided. That's what the intercessor is for. That's what they were praying to Moses for. To make this stuff plain so you can understand why we looked at all of this. The people had been sinning and it caused the fire to come down to devour them, and they prayed to Moses that Moses would pray to Yahuwah. They cried to Moses for help, that he would intercede to Yahuwah on their behalf, that wrath would be quenched. Jeremiah and Isaiah is painting a picture of women wailing and mourning because of sin and the destruction of Jerusalem and of the people, which in turn was pointing to Yahusha, and they were wailing because of that. And that how Yahusha would come to make intercession on their behalf, to turn that mourning and that wailing away. Because remember what it said, joy, pain may endure for a night, but joy come in the morning. And he came to wipe away all tears and things of that nature. So you have to turn. Or if not, you will be wailing and lamenting. Because the whole purpose of this man was to turn away the wailing and lamenting, so the wrath could be turned away from you. Verse 30. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills cover us. For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? If they'll do it to a Mashiach, what you think they gonna do to somebody who ain't got no life in them? And there were also two other malefactors led with them to be put to death. And when they will come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand and the other on the left, then said, Yahusha, Abba, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiments and cast his lots. That's what we came here for with that verse 34, to tie it into the fact of Numbers 11. They was interceding on the people's behalf that they could be forgiven. Because the people didn't know what they were doing with all that murmuring and complaining. Because if they did, they wouldn't have done it. So they were seeking to be saved to the uttermost of Elohim by coming unto Moses, as you seek to be saved by coming to Elohim by coming unto Yahusha, that he may pray or intercede on your behalf, that the wrath of Elohim may be turned. What is that wrath that may be turned from you? But the wrath of eternal damnation or death because of sin. Numbers 11 again. Verse 3. And we're a verse away from what we came here for. Now, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of Yahuwah burnt among them. And Taberah means burning. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. And the children of Yasharal also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? It said the people fell a lusting. And the word that we see for lusting is avah. But it's also ta'avah. And ta'avah is what we really focused on. And that word is desire. It's the wishing and longing of one's heart. It's appetite. Covetous in bad sense. Things desired or object of desire. When we look at the characters for said word, we have the tau, we have the aleph, we have the u, and we have the hey. And what we get from that is we behold a sacrifice of the strength of the covenant, so to speak. You know, some people may come up with different variations of it, but nevertheless, that's what we have. We have, again, I'll say it again, it's ta'avah, T-A, apostrophe, A-V-A-H. It's tau, aleph, u, and hey. Tau, aleph, u, and hey. So when we're looking at that, we're beholding the sacrifice of strength, or the strength of the covenant of sacrifice. The people asked, how could they get meat, because they had fell a lusting, and that was what their desire was. So we're going to deal with that before we flip it in the positive aspect. Let's swing around here let's go to Psalm 78 and 27. Psalm 78 and 27. Psalm 78 and 27. Make it 25. 22 and using better. Because they believed not Elohim and trusted not in his salvation, though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of Shamahim, and rained down and had rained down manna upon them to eat. And he gave them the corn of Shamahim. Man did eat Malachim's food, and he sent them meat to the full. And he caused the east wind to blow in Shamahim, and by the power... Oh, matter of fact, back that up. Let's go on here to do it even more. Back that up. 17. Because you got to remember, they did behold the sacrifice of the covenant. They did behold it, because they beholded him sacrificing the firstborn of Egypt. They watched it. They saw it. And their desire should have been to Elohim, but it was not. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. They tempt Elohim in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against Elohim. They said, can Elohim furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock, that waters gushed out and streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flesh for his people? Because remember, that's what we read in Numbers. They asked, who shall give us flesh to eat? Therefore Yahuwah heard this and was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Yasharal, because they believed not in Elohim and trusted not in his salvation. See, that's why they were complaining. Though he had commanded the clouds from above, and the doors from Shamahim, and he had rained down manna upon them to eat, and gave them the corn of Shamahim. Man did eat Malachim's food, and he sent them meat to the full. He caused the east wind to blow in Shamahim, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like as the sand of the sea. And he let it fall in the midst of their camp, round about their habitations. So they did eat, and were filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were not estranged from their lust, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of Elohim came upon them, and he slew the fattest of them, and smote down the chosen men of Yasharal. And for all this they sinned still, and believed not for his wondrous works. Now, that's telling you something. They said when he did this here, they said they were still in their desire or the longing or the desire of their heart. Because that's what we're going to be looking at this week, is desire. Where's your desire? Firstly, we're starting with the negative aspect of desire before we even get into any positives. I was intending on doing both for the setup. We'll set up the negative who are willing and deal with the positive on the Shabbat. Only because of the context of where we starting off in the law with this and branching from there. These people asked for meat in their lust. Because if we go back to Numbers 11, and let's go back to Numbers 11. Look at verse 6 and what these people said. We'll read verse 5. He said, we remember the fish we did eat in Mishraim freely, the cucumbers, the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There's nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. So you look at Psalm 7, that's what he's talking about. They crying that we ain't got nothing but some manna. Drop down to verse 11. Make it 10. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of Yahuwah was kindled greatly, and Moses was also displeased. Moses said unto Yahuwah, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? Wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou lay the burden of all this people upon me? Now y'all already know that Yahushua was afflicted for us, and that the burden was laid upon him. Let's look at the word burden. That word burden is masah. And it's a load, it's a bearing, it's a tribute. And we already read that because we read in Luke already that he had to bear that cross, and he had to bear that burden. You know that he said he was a strong ass couching down between two burdens. But let's go to Luke chapter 9 real quickly. Luke chapter 9. Yes, Tabby. 9 and 18. Yes, Tabby. You cannot be picked up at this time, Tabby. Not at this time, Tabby. Tabby. Abby. 9 and 18. Go sit down, Tabby. And it came to pass, as he was alone praying, his disciples were with him, and he asked them, saying, whom say the people that I am? They answering said, Yachanan their mercer, but some said Elijah, others say that one of the old prophets is risen again. He said unto them, but whom say ye that I am? Peter answering said, Hamashiach of Elohim. He straitly charged them and commanded them to tell no man that thing. saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes and be slain and be raised the third day. And he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his stake daily and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. For what is a man advantage if he gain the whole world and lose himself or be cast away? For whosoever shall be ashamed of me and of my words, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he shall come in his own esteem and in his hours and of his Kadesh Malachim. But I tell you the truth, there are some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of Elohim. So, what do we sit back and we look at that for? Because when we also look at desire and we know that that's the beholding the strength of the sacrifice of the covenant, and that you're taking this stake. See, the difference of when you look at the desire of those who were lusting in the wilderness is that they had forgotten that sacrifice and that strength. Or they had forgotten they forgot that they had beheld that strength. They forgot that they had beheld that sacrifice. They had forgotten that they had entered into this covenant. They had forgotten, which is why they went to lusting. Now they no longer remember Yahuwah. Now no longer is their desire to Yahuwah. Now they no longer long for him in their heart. Because this is what happened. That's the Deuteronomy 32 that we looked at when we were talking about the rock. Yeshurun waxed fat and kicked. See, when you begin to, you feel like you were doing bad, and you was in a low state, and you was afflicted. See, remember, we looking at the further down in Numbers 11, Moses said, why am I afflicted for this people's sake? And why have you put all their burden on me? Why is all this burden on me? Look at verse 12, what he said in Numbers 11. Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them? That they should say unto me, carry them in thy bosom as a nursing father, bearing the sucking child into the land, which thou swear unto thy fathers. When should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it's too heavy for me. And when you turn around and you look at Yahushua, he didn't bear all these people alone. That's why Simon the Cyrene was there to carry the stake for him. Showing you again how he's a prophet like unto Moses. But again, these people were asking for flesh to eat. So Yahushua knowing, Abba Yahuwah knowing what they were going to do, this again gives you, and the reason why we talking about this is because truth be told, because Passover's coming. I'm just going to keep it real. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we're taking this direction. It's not like we've never looked at it before. We're just looking at it at a different angle. Because Passover's coming, and he gave you flesh to eat. You asked him for flesh to eat, and he was giving it to you to eat. So you can understand why your Savior said the things that he said. So that you might believe on his name, and that your mind and heart might be renewed, and your spirit might be transformed, and that heart of stone might be taken out of you, and you might receive a heart of flesh. But your desire, see, you have to, in order to get to the second aspect of what we're dealing with, which I don't want to give it away before the time. In order for you to execute the next stage of the conversation that we're having, that desire has to be there. It has to be there. If it's not there, it ain't gonna work. Because the reason I'm saying this here, because when we get to the next two words that we're gonna deal with, and the key centerpiece verse of this whole conversation, you're gonna see exactly what I'm talking about. Because see, when you remember the strength of the sacrificial covenant, when you remember Yahushua and his sacrifice, when you remember the mercy of the living Elohim, when that means will cause you to remember Abba Yahuwah, then you will remember not to go after your lust and to go lusting in your own heart. You will remember him, because your desire is to him. Your longing is to him. See, Yahushua got up on that stake, and his longing was to please his Father. That's what his desire was. That was the appetite of his heart. What is the appetite of yours? See, your forefathers, their appetite was the lust of their belly. See, 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Praise the Lamb. And now to make this statement in 1 Corinthians 6 and 14 a little bit stronger. Now I want it. Verse 6 and 12. 6 and 12. All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Meats for the belly, belly for the meats. But Elohim shall destroy both it and them. Now the body is not for fornication, but for the master, and the master for the body. let's go back to where do I want to go with this? Back to Numbers 11. That's where I want to go with it. Numbers 11 and 16. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Yasharal, whom thou know to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there. And I will take of the ruach which is upon thee, and I will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. And say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh. For you have wept in the ears of Yahuwah, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Mizraim. Therefore Yahuwah will give you flesh, and you shall eat. And you shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but even a whole month, until it come out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because you have despised Yahuwah, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Mizraim? And Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen, and thou hast said, I will give them flesh, that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice them? Shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? And Yahuwah said unto Moses, as Yahuwah's hand waxed short, thou shalt see now whether my words shall come to pass unto thee or not. And Moses went out and told the people the words of Yahuwah, and gathered 70 men of the elders of the people, and sat them round about the tabernacle. Yahuwah came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the ruach that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass, when the ruach rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. Now we're going to read all the extra part. But then we get to verse 31. We know that he brought down the east wind, brought down all these flesh. We're going to read verse 33. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of Yahuwah was kindled against the people, and Yahuwah smote them with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibaroth Ata'aba, because they buried the people that lusted. Now the name of that city, I'm sorry, I hit definitely the wrong thing for that, is Graves of Lust. That's what that city means. Graves of Lust. And then Abba is the word for lust, and that's the desire to covet, to wait longfully, to wish, to desire, to long, the lust of bodily appetites, which as we can see, meats for the belly for the meat, saying Elohim will destroy it and them. And then the Abba, we just taking the tar off, so you have the Aleph, the U, and the Hey. So when the innocents, because of their lust, they beheld the sacrifice of strength. They beheld Yah sacrificing them because they cried out for some meat. They shortened his power. They didn't believe, they didn't trust, and they cried out in their lust. Now we're going to talk about these graves of lust a little bit further as the Yah willing, as the week goes on. We don't even really need the other part of this play. Let me see whether we want to do this here. Let's go to Proverbs. No, I don't even want that. Don't even want that. Let's go to Psalms 112 and about 8, and we will call it a day from there. Psalms 112 and 8. Give me a second. Make that about verse 6. We'll make it 5. A good man show favor and lend. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Let me see what we get for discretion. I say the meter this he'll be on. That's mishpat. That's judgment. You have to say you're gonna guide your way. You're gonna guide yourself with judgment. You got to guide your affairs with judgment. Surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. Let me see this here with remembrance. Remembrance is setting us up.
In your night clothes. Go put them on. Go put on the night clothes.
What we got on the Shabbat. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in Yahuwah. His heart is established. He shall not be afraid until he see his desires upon his enemies. He hath dispersed, he hath given to the poor, his righteousness endure. His horn shall be exalted with honor. The wicked shall see it and be grieved. He shall gnash with his teeth and melt away. The desire of the wicked shall perish. That's that same word, the ta'aba or the abba. See, when the desire of the wicked is always going to perish, and that word for perish is the abad that we talked about last week for the lost sheep. And if we can remember that with the abad, you have the aleph, the bat, and the daleth. And that's what people who, when you sit back and you look at it, their desire will perish. Their ability to enter into the door of strength, which is in the house, is gone. Because they didn't behold the strength of the covenant. See, they hadn't forgotten, they didn't forsake everything, and they didn't take up that state. And that's what happened with your forefathers who we read about in Numbers. They forgot. When you forget, you die. And his wrath is kindled. Now the part that we'll look at on the flip side was the intercessing of Moses on their behalf. So Yahuwah willing, when we get to the Shabbat and we flip desire. Because we had to look at desire in the negative. Because of the longing of the flesh. The longing of the things of this world. Caused destruction and death for many, and his wrath couldn't be quenched. So of course we have to look at the flip side of desiring him, his word, his name, his justice, his judgment, his salvation, and things of that nature. And Yahuwah willing, that's what we would do on the Shabbat. So hallelujah for Yahusha and the word, and we will start right